Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining our new episode of The Inside Scoop, the first episode of 2025. Today, we're really excited to talk about the ethics of influencer marketing in 2025. And we're joined today by our guest speaker, Garett Senez, VP of Marketing and Partner at QuarkBaby, a brand that's redefining modern parenting products, how they look and how they're marketed. Garett has extensive experience in the industry with many different companies. And lots of great insight to share with you and with real examples and practical tips. So Garett, thank you so much for joining us today.
Lyndsie, oh, there we go. Hey, I'm in the top right corner. That's fun. So everybody, super excited. This is something that obviously I'm pretty passionate about. Look forward to diving into it with you. As Lyndsie mentioned, I am partner over at QuarkBaby. Quark is a baby brand. We make innovative products that are designed for modern parents. So that's as simple as I can make it. We have 35 SKUs across a lot of different categories, but people fundamentally know us for our baby tech. So we have a 501 baby food maker. I have it somewhere here. You may see it behind me. We have a bottle warmer. It's pretty much something that can heat up liquids for 10 hours on a single charge. So you can take it right through TSA onto an airplane. And we also have the safest baby bottles on market. I'm not going to bore you with it, but they don't shed microplastics. There's no synthetic estrogenic or androgenic activity. They're amazing. So check us out. We're at QuarkBaby.com, and we're also on any social platform at QuarkBaby. So there's your plug.
Thanks, Garett. Amazing. As a mom, I can definitely see a lot of value in those products, especially that warmer for when you travel. I wish I had that back when I had my little ones. So thank you.
Yeah. No problem. It's done well for us. We're excited about
it. So I did want to remind everybody that at the end of the session, we're actually going to open it up for questions from you guys, from the audience. So if you look to the right of your screen, you're going to see an icon for a chat with a question mark on it. You can drop your questions in at any time during this session. And at the end, Garett and I will address those for you. So I thought, Garett, the perfect place for us to start is to maybe catch everybody up on kind of the history of influencer marketing. So how did we really get to where we are today and some of the challenges that we're faced with as marketers today?
Cool. So first off, as Lyndsie mentioned, I'm a marketer by trade, right? So I worked at L'Oreal, I worked at Miller. I'm trying to structure this, whether if you're in media, whether you're a brand looking to gain traction, or if you're an influencer yourself, I'm going to try and give you some real life things. And this is why I think that any conversation, whether we're talking about ethics or just influencing in general, it needs to be predicated on a baseline understanding of where we are, and why we got here in the first place, right? Because that's really going to set the precursor for all the full kind of discussion that we're here. So the concept of influencer marketing obviously is not new, right? Using someone else to tell your story has been around forever. Don't quote me on this, but I think it's like in the 1700s or something when like people were making tea sets for the queen and etc. So it's been around for a very, very long time. What's changed over the last 20 years is the arena. So how people are performing this task, and it's dramatically shifted over time. So let's that really quickly. Like last 20 years, YouTube was founded in 2005. Twitter closely came behind. Instagram started in 2010. If you guys remember Vine, I'm dating myself, right? But Vine was super popular, and then Twitter actually bought Vine out after 4 months. TikTok came in 2016, then Discord in 17, 18, and now you've got literally countless apps and programs. And the ones that I'm referencing to now are the ones that are just in North America, right? Like I have a big Asian business. We're going to bypass WeChat and Xiaohongshu and all those other ones, but there are massive behemoths in Asia, which frankly actually are well ahead of the curves that we have here locally. But on all of these platforms for years, right, there have been creators and brands trying to hack and growth hack a better return on ad spend. As a brand, I'm telling you, like all we really try to do is arbitrage. We try and find ways to spend less and to get more. And I've done this my entire life, regardless of where I am. It's the name of the game, and it's why advertisers continually jump and move spends around to test new platforms. I also think that it's why new platforms come into existence anyway, right? It's to monetize these platforms eventually. So there's a bit of a symbiosis here. And the major platforms these days for most creators are YouTube, Instagram, there's X, or previously Twitter, and TikTok, although there's hundreds, but those are kind of like the 4 or 5 main ones. TikTok is an interesting one, right? It's the one that's up for sale right now. We'll see what happens. I think the deadline is on the 5th, Lyndsie, right? It's coming up pretty soon. So why TikTok got so popular in the United States is because content creators, when it launched, there just wasn't enough content going around to fill everybody's explore pages. So you had pieces of content that actually truly went viral because of it. And when we have viral content, right, there's proof points for influencers to start charging money, right? And then pretty much, boom, the creator economy was born overnight. So we've got content creators on these platforms that want to monetize the business. We've got ad platforms that want to sell ads, right? And then we've got brands that want to sell products, all kind of together. And what was happening earlier on is that brands were able to capitalize on micro-influencers as a way almost of scaling the brands. And they did that because it was cheap. And when I say cheap, it means like the ROAS, the return on investment, was higher than the cost of running ads on that platform for similar exposure or impressions. So brands were partnering with micro-influencers, and in many cases, we're getting really, really, really good results. I'm talking 8, 10, 20x return on ad spend. So it made sense. And these are not small brands either, right? Like we're talking like L'Oreal is a really good example, Colgate, Sony, etc. So a lot of brands started doing it. I should also say, sorry to pop up, when I say micro, I mean like under 100K. Okay, so there's like nano, which is like 10 to 100, micro under 100K, from 100K to a million, it's macro, and then celebrity past. But so going back to micro, they had really, really good results on brands with micro. And it worked because micro influencers were trusted. There's a focus on authenticity. There's a focus on connections, right? And really working and targeting on specific niches. So when you have that trust, and trust, is already everything with brands. It's what you need. It's a win-win. And it made sense for brands to start advertising. So for a long time, this worked. It made sense for both brands and influencers, really up until about 2012. Like Mr. Beast, for example, started in 2012. And from 2012 to kind of COVID, we had this rapid growth, right? Like influencer marketing became mainstream. The industry itself got organized. And when there's a lot more of something, there's higher competition. And I was thinking about this last night, like during that time, like supply and demand should have adjusted, right? So normal economics would mean that like if there's a lot more influencers on the platform and there's the same amount of platforms, you would drive the price down. But actually what happened was the opposite. Prices went up. And it happened because influencers initially were doing it for free product and maybe some sort of small compensation, right? And then formalized influencer agencies came on board and they started to get organized. Brands started shifting big dollars, like I'm talking not 25, 50K, like hundreds of $1 million into influencer marketing. And that demand was actually growing faster than supply. So the platforms then caught on to this, right? And Facebook actually reduced organic reach from 2016, okay? Which meant that influencers who built real engaged audiences, people that were actually speaking to them and had real following, became much, much more valuable because it was hard for brands to find and replicate that audience quickly, right?
Right.
So, have I lost you? You're still with me?
Yeah, we're still with you. Yeah, definitely. Definitely oversaturation is kind of what we saw trending in the last few years, right? Just everybody's an influencer nowadays.
So that's exactly right. Brands were paying a lot of it, right? But the problem is that over time, attribution became a big issue. And when I say attribution, I mean, does X equals Y, right? Someone who saw your post actually convert to what you want them to do? Did they buy? Did they sign up? Did they follow? So the return on ad spend, specifically on micro-influencers, was a little bit up for debate because everybody started doing this, right? And then at the same time, you had huge megastars like Kevin Hart, The Rock, Kim K. They started pushing their own brands, right? And then you had like mega creators come out of nowhere, like the Kai Cenats of the world, right? They came out of nowhere. And everybody really started to figure out, well, what are we doing here, right? Like we got to kind of try and get dialed. So in 2025 now, there's been a bit of a shift in strategy. I think the pendulum still has swung almost the other way because if brands can't compete with if micro-influencers can't compete with a strong ROAS, well, then you might as well get much bigger exposure. You might as well go the other way, go to mega creators who and it's more of an awareness play. So there's almost two tiers of influencers right now. There's the performance focused, almost influencer marketing for almost an ROI driven small brand spend at a high ROAS. And then there's everybody else. And that's like The Rock, et cetera. And you do those for influencer focused marketing, big names, and more of an awareness play versus ROAS. So that's kind of where we're at today. With me?
Yeah, I'm with you. That's not a bad history. Like you condensed 20 years, I guess, or so of history in it was great.
So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So, I think it's really good for you to set the stage of kind of where we with where we were with influencer marketing, what it's evolved to, and I'm sure along the way we've seen some good, bad, and ugly things kind of come out of that. I'm sure
Totally.
that you've seen that across the years and even in your experience. So, what are some of the things that you've noticed?
Yeah. So, I mean, with influencers, to your point, there's things that work and there's things that don't, right? So, things that work, brand storytelling works. Influencers are good storytellers, right? They can weave brand messages into a relatable narrative. Sure. There's trust, right? So people believe influencers, and there's a sense of authenticity that an influencer can pass off to your brand, which I think is great. And then obviously, like even if you're going to go on the bigger scale, awareness is obviously good. So I think that there is a role, and as a brand, there's a role that influencers can play that can be leveraged, and it probably can be leveraged better than any ad, I would say, that an agency could kind of put up. Right? There's some really good value there and juice to squeeze, I think. The issue, particularly as kind of this ROAS stuff fell, is that there are a lot of issues with influencers, right? And this is kind of where I think a lot of people are going to be interested in, because an influencer can very easily uh, manipulate
Right.
their following. They can manipulate their engagement, right? So that's a huge issue, and it's an issue particularly when brands are looking for genuine connections, and you're actually manipulating that promotion. So that's an issue. There's also a huge issue of unregulation, right? So there's inadequate disclosure of paid partnerships, and really no accountability. You have an issue, you can't really go after them. I mean, I've had experiences with this with Quark, which we can talk about later. Cost is an issue. In many cases, when people are manipulating the stuff, you pay a lot and you get nothing. Some influencers really are not that professional, so we've seen a little bit of that. So there's issues there. I talked a little bit earlier in the discussion about transparency, right? So X equals Y kind of attribution is a big issue. They don't always, like, if you have a link, maybe let's say you give them an affiliate link, they'll post a link to their Amazon because they have higher margin, right? So your attribution is very, very tough to say what you've done and what you paid for actually leads to your outcome. And then misinformation is probably the largest issue, I think, at scale. If you're operating with 25 to 50 to 150 different influencers at the same time, there can be mass misrepresentation of product benefits, right? And we've seen a lot of issues. Let's think if you go back to COVID, right, with Jake Paul, and the hoax issue. There was, like, recently we saw Hawk Tua, the girl. She had a huge crypto scam, right? There's the issues with the Liver King and health and wellness claims. So there's a lot of misinformation that can go along. So brands are going to need to navigate both of these issues and weigh out, if I'm going to go down the influencer route, they got to really make sure that it works and you've done your vetting process. Otherwise, you can fall victim to some of these issues.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's lots of concerns there with trust and transparency. So it's a really tricky area for, I think, brands to navigate nowadays. But we know that there's some brands that have done this and they've done it really well. And so for the brands that you think are doing it really well, Garett, what are some things that you think they're doing differently?
Sure. Well, let's chat Quark first. We're very, very big on micro and almost nano influencers for a couple different reasons. If you're thinking about parents, right? Like, we're trying to get parents to take our products in and give them to the most valuable things in their life, which is their children. So we have to make sure that anyone who is speaking on behalf of us is dialed, right? And what does that mean? Like, we're going back, we're checking what collabs they've done with in the past, who they've worked with in the past, obviously, and then finding ways that their messaging is right on point for us, right? So that's the biggest thing for us, is trying to do a bit of that vetting process, right? As it relates to content, our parents want parenting hacks. They want to laugh. They almost want to find some content which, in a fun and meaningful way, showcases our products and how we use them, but is still done in an authentic way, right? So that's what we do. We use influencers and collaborations as a way to try and really tie a tiny spend towards some sort of moderate outcome, and then do that en masse as much as we can. And that's why, like, even if you go on our Instagram page right now, it's like, hey, find us, get a collab, follow us, etc. Right? Like, we try and recruit on an ongoing basis for that, because it works for us. Brands that are doing it well, I think I'll name two. And I'm Canadian. We're based in Vancouver, so I'm going to give you some Canadian brands, but don't bear with me. It is tariff day, so we'll see what happens.
That's fine. We have a North American audience.
Yeah, so I think two ones. Number one, I would take a look at Monos, Monos. They're based out of Vancouver. They sell luggage. What these guys are doing is fantastic. not just from an influencer perspective, but they're using influencers almost as part of their top line major ad funnel. So they'll take influencer A that they love. They work with hundreds, but they take influencer A that they love. They'll give them a brief, they're on brand, and they'll create a narrative of, hey, this is me on the go today, I'm traveling to Dallas, whatever like that. Then they take that ad and they run that on YouTube in like the main box of YouTube. So people see that content and they engage with it, but they're engaging with it not as part of a monos ad, but as part of the listing process with that influencer. So someone clicks on that ad, right? They view the thing and then they start the funnel, right? So they can remarket them again later, right? And then if they click on the actual product box on that ad, it actually goes directly to a custom, whether it's Unbounce, I don't know actually what page they're using, but it's a custom product landing page that's dedicated to that influencer's content, right? That starts to speak to a little bit about what they're doing. Check them out. They do a fantastic job, and I'm butchering what they do. Like they just signed Adrian Brody, for God's sake. Like they're crushing it. So take a look at what they do. I think they have some really good influencers, and they do that on, like, that's an example of one that's done en masse. I know they've got well over 1,000 influencers, I say, that are working with them. The other one I'll say is Midday Squares. Also Canadian company, owners are fantastic, but what they're doing is really customized content by channel. So whereas one is an awareness play with monos, Midday Squares, like if you look at their LinkedIn content, for example, it's customized, big block letters that are easy to read as people are scrolling down LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
It's much more financial content, right, that is going, and they'll find influencers to kind of seed in there as needed. And then if you go to their Instagram, for example, it's much different. They do small scale influencer collabs, but it's much more hook based, engagement based, because they know how the algorithms work in terms of view time for Instagram. So it's just a different way of operating, both scale and mid and top tier, but both of them are doing fantastic things. And this is me, like I'm a brand trying to growth hack, as I mentioned. I'm on their page. What are they doing? How are they playing around? Like it's really, really fun to see what they're doing.
Yeah, and I know that's a huge concern for you working at QuarkBaby. You have a very sensitive audience, an audience that you want to make sure you're speaking to at the right moment, at the right time. You want to be sensitive with the messages you're pushing out. So, yeah, I think those are some amazing examples, your business in particular as well. So just to wrap things up a little bit, are there any things that you would mention as kind of practical advice or things that kind of tie this all together that people want to take away with them as they think about either improving their influencer strategy or developing one in 2025? Are there things that they can do that will help them grow and be successful?
Yeah, I think being very, okay. So first off, you can spend money in a myriad of ways, right? We know this.
Yeah.
Impressions mean nothing in 2025. I can buy impressions like with $1. So if you're going to look at it from an influencer perspective, I think first and foremost, you have to find one that is truly dialed to your brand, right? And truly authentic in the way that they create content. You have to put them on brief. So if you're going to do a lot of these, what it turns out, and we made this mistake firsthand, is if you don't specifically, you want to give them a brief so that they can say, okay, listen, here are the cues of my brand. Here's how to represent my brand. Here's the copy that you want to use. Here's the product benefits. Put them in a box, right? But then equally, you have to let them be creative, because that's what's going to get people viewing their content in the first place. And it's also the type of content that their viewers are expecting, right? So it's very much a balance between what you want them to say and what they end up saying. But what I do know is that if you don't at least put a tight box together, your paid promotions, your influencer content ends up looking like UGC, where it's like a little bit of everything. Do you know what I mean? A tag post, it's really, really, really messy. The best example, again, of this, as I mentioned, Monos, go to Monos' Instagram page and click on tagged photos. You will see hundreds and hundreds of influencers talking about their stuff, but it all looks as if it was done by the brand. So whether they're paying a production team to go there or they're giving very specific brand cues, right? That's the special sauce that every brand is going to have to navigate as they build.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, even being a fellow marketer, protecting your brand is so important. And that really is how you build that trust and transparency with your audiences. But you need to keep your influencer marketing authentic and to look a little bit organic, but still be on brand. So that is challenging on how you control that in such it's a little bit of a wild, wild west environment that we have today in influencer marketing.
It can be nutty. And also, like, the dynamics shift on these platforms literally weekly. The algorithms on these platforms shift daily, and the platforms that you use, right, are going to change, right?
Yeah.
Like that's becoming very popular. Like social live selling is becoming very, very popular. Amazon is experimenting with their live selling program. That is going to change dramatically because that's what's already happening in Asia. Like when I mentioned Xiaohongshu, like we've got brands that are doing 150, 200 million in revenue a day,
Wow.
just live shopping through
Yeah.
influencers, right? Just live shopping. So like that trend hasn't really come here because WeChat's not predominant here yet. But
Right.
a lot of these big tech behemoths know that this exists, right? Know that consumer behavior can be crafted to work that way, and they're going to start bringing these proven techniques over to the main platforms. So it's going to change dramatically over the next little while. We don't need to get into live and social selling now, but it's going to change, and you really got to be on it. Like you need someone to manage it for you and be on it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I mean, you have this long history of influencer marketing and how it's evolved with the different channels that have come out and the way we use influencer marketing, but we have to always be forward thinking. So we have to be in the now planning for 2025, but the marketer is always planning for that next move. So I think that's extremely important that you bring that topic up, Garett. I think that's about all that we wanted to cover today, but I did want to just open it up to Q&A. I know we have some amazing questions that I actually saw come in the chat. So I'll moderate these a little bit for you, Garett. It looks like the first one we have, it's an amazing question. So the first one we have is, how do you deal with the new trend that influencers want more control and more money for use of their content? So royalty fees, things like that we're seeing. It's kind of like that diva behavior we're seeing carry over. And we see stories about this all the time now in the press, right? There's lots of news on this, and you kind of hear snippets of how certain people are getting a little bit harder to work with. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, so a couple things. First and foremost, I swear a little bit. At some point, you're going to have to call people on their bullshit, right?
Yeah.
If the metrics aren't there, the numbers are the numbers. If the metrics aren't there, they don't work. But a lot of times, how we kind of think about it is first brand in hand, like let them test it, let an influencer test it and see if they actually really like it, right? Would you actually use it if you weren't paying for them? And this is huge, like in the baby space, right? Like do you have a baby in the first place? No?
Right.
Okay.
Then we don't want
doesn't
to
make sense, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. If they do have kids, would they use the bottles in the first place? Okay, you would. Okay, great. Can we gift it to you? Great. A lot of times what we've seen is that influencers will say, okay, listen, we're talking about diva behavior, but influencers will say, well, they're drawn to our cause. Hey, I understand what your mission is. I get it. I'll do this. Send me X amount. Send me some for my friends. I'll take care of it, right? So there is ways to kind of hack the system, right? But the other best way, brands, again, you're going to, what I said earlier, you have to define what your metrics are. Are you going to X equals Y? I want a high return on ad spend. I have attribution. I'm going to give you a link. You're going to get 10, 15% commission or whatever like that, but I can track every sale. Are we doing that?
Right.
Or are using influencers as more of an awareness play, which is much more obtuse and is much less me hounding people to say, okay, listen, can you put your links out, send me the recaps, etc. So if you are of the former, right, there's going to be a negotiation piece, right? But the best thing about this is that there's not an unlimited amount of influencers, but there's a lot, particularly in every niche, right? So whether you're in baby, whether you're selling speakers, it doesn't matter what you're saying. There's influencers in every category, right? So if you're not finding, if people are divas, let's just say I'm in beauty, I want to launch a lipstick, and everybody I go to is $2,500 a post, which is insane, by the way.
Right.
I can't scale that way. Okay, so then if I can't scale that way on Instagram, for example, are there other platforms that I can go to, right? Is Pinterest going on? What's happening? Like you play around with the platform perspective to see arbitrage. Are they all at that rate? Probably not, right? So find the platform first, and then there should be some, right, that you can advocate for, even if they're expensive. Let's just say it's $2,500. I can't afford to do that. I can afford to give you product and $500 a post, right, which is still, again, a lot if you post. But then they don't forget that they also need, like influencers also need to build up a content bank of what they're doing in order to sell more influencer partnerships, right? Yeah. So if they don't have a case study, right, you can be that case study and you can advocate for that. So there's ways to negotiate along the way. But I think it first depends on what your goals are. You awareness or ROAS. And if you're ROS, you just got to grill them down. And in most cases, if they agree with your brand, with your promise, if your product is good, right, and they actually do like you, in most cases, there's significant, I found, wiggle room along the way.
Yeah, and I love that concept of a symbiotic relationship, right? Like they need you, you need them, and finding the right influencer means find one who sees value in you and your brand and what you're doing, and that you find value in as an influencer too. So I think that's an amazing point that you brought up. It looks like we do have another question from Matt. Sorry. Did you have anything else to add, Garett?
No, I just think that you just, like I said, it's, you got to be adaptive, and there's a way to hack the system. There always is a way to hack the system. You just have to find that hack. And you just agree to everything that you're going to get, and it's X. This is the charge per post. Okay, I'm going to spend the money. You're never going to win. Being honest, you just got to find a way to break and arbitrage it.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. Over to Maddie's question. So she's asking, have you found any benefits to having ambassadors? So for your, I guess, particular brand, what are the benefits that you've seen?
Yeah, so absolutely. I think, as I mentioned before, I think influencers, ambassadors can tell a trusted brand story probably better than you can in an ad. But there's ways to go about it, right? So as it stands right now, there's two main platforms. There's Shopify, and then there's Amazon affiliates, right? So those are the two ways to kind of have. Both of those offer different commission levels, and you have to give some sort of incentive for people to be able to sell and track. There's absolute benefit there for me as a brand owner, because I'm looking not just for brand awareness, I'm actually looking for some effectiveness out of my spend. So absolutely there's this. In terms, if you mean ambassadors, meaning long-term relationships, that too I think is super important. I have found for us, typically when we go around with an influencer and we do a partnership with them, it's definitely a 2, 3, or 4 term cycle. Like we'll test, we'll gift, we'll let them play, but then we'll do something for the long run. Like if someone meets all the criteria and I've done the work and the vetting process to make sure that they fit in line with what we are, I'm not just going to be a one and done. I'm going to do multiple ones. And I think the reinforcement of a person talking about your stuff over longer terms actually gives better dividends. Do you know what I mean? Because you're not just a flash in the pan. There is a authenticity that actually can be truly mirrored, not just once, but over time. Right. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Thanks. I think the next one we have comes from Joanna. So what is the best way to locate and contact the micro influencers? So I love this question. So again, thinking about planning, if you've not done it before, what are your tips, Garett, on the best way to find these folks?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different ways. Shopify makes it really, really easy. So Shopify, people apply to the Shopify platform. You can log into their backend and you can get pretty much everything they need. You can search their following, their reach, their engagement, like the metrics that you need. You can search by location. You can search by platform that they're on and the following or engagement on that platform. It makes it super easy, and there's literally a button outreach. So Shopify has made it very, very easy. You do need to be a Shopify seller if you're a D2C brand, and you need to be able to fulfill those products through Shopify, right? So it works with both, but Shopify makes it super easy. Of course, you can find them on your own. There are tools to do that. Flanks. I think it's flanks.io or flanks.com. PHLANX is a screening tool. You can do that. Influencer, STER is one, but you can just Google like influencer software. There's loads of them, and they all have their different ways to search and find your criteria and outreach. The issue is that a lot of these platforms either operate on a freemium model where the first 25 outreach is free and then you pay after. Super frustrating as a brand. Yeah. You're paying without certain outreach. Or, unfortunately, is that they do no, and I'm being honest, they do no vetting of the influencers. Like at least on Shopify, it's vetted, like they're regular people. A lot of the secondary accounts are what I spoke about earlier, people who have whatever, let's just say 2,000 followers that actually have 150,000 followers. That's all non-organic, all paid fake stuff. And they manipulate the things, and you can audit them again with different tools. And they're all based in Russia. And you're like, okay, this doesn't really make sense. Like stuff that doesn't add up. So you're gonna have to figure out what works for you. But Shopify makes it really, really easy. Or don't be afraid. Just like for me, Miss USA talks about her stuff all the time. She had a son who was feeding through a nose tube and had huge issues. I literally just DM'd her myself directly, being like, hey, I love you, first off. I love your story and how you're sharing with it. I'd love just to work with you. Can I send you some free product? And we did, right? And then it just started there, and it's slowly building over time, right? So there are ways to nurture and build an audience that doesn't always necessarily need to be so scripted or so tactical.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that approach. So you really identified somebody you thought resonated with your brand, right? They probably had the values and that they're talking about things that you feel like really fit your brand, and you reached out knowing their situation. So I think that's a really authentic way to get some really great influencers in there and kind of weed through that noise or some of those challenges with some of those mass sites. So I think that's really powerful.
Well, one thing I'll also add is I think it's important that before you pay them, right, you need a contract. We haven't even talked about this. It's just practical advice for brands and D2C people. get a contract, get a scope of work of what it's going to buy, get your end deliverables, right? Get some sort of refitting clause. So if they agree, you agree, they provide the content and it's not on brand or it's off brief, that you reserve the right for a round of edits so they can go back and edit it so it is on your brand. Otherwise, you're just going to be going back and forth with all this. And again, there's loads of tools that help you manage this too, but you definitely should have that because 60% of cases, the content that you receive isn't going to be perfect.
Yeah, so that's a great piece of advice for folks. Well, at this point, it looks like that's all the questions that we have today, Garett. So I know that you have a really exciting offer to share with our viewers today. Do you want to go ahead and talk about that offer?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. You can go to the link below. You can either click on that link and it's automatically updated for you, or you can check out with promo code illumin, ILLUMIN, and it's 25% everything. We also have free shipping over $99, so you can double hack the system and stock up for all your littles. So it's there.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with our audience. And if you guys caught it, that link was posted at the bottom of your screen. If you missed it, or if you don't have something to write with right now, don't worry. We will send this link out with the recording afterwards for those who attended it through email. So with that, thank you so much, Garett, for sharing all these insights. And thank you for everyone who joined us on this episode of our Inside Scoop. I hope you all walk away with a fresh perspective on influencer marketing and how to approach it more ethically and effectively for your brands in 2025. If you enjoyed our conversation, be sure to follow us on LinkedIn for more insights, resources, updates on our coming events. Our next Inside Scoop webinar, which you won't want to miss, we'll have another surprise guest speaker. But again, thank you so much, Garett, for all your time today. We really appreciate all the amazing information. And
no problem, everybody.
Thank you.
Good luck.